Hello, this is Tim Zink and welcome back to Zink Sterling. In this video we'll be covering how to make your own wire from scratch. So to start out with, you'll need a crucible, a torch, a round stock ingot mold, a fire brick for safety, rolling mill that can produce either square or some do round wire, a round wire draw plate, a file, and then wire drawing pliers, and of course sterling silver to start out with. At the beginning here, what you'll see me doing is I am using an oxidized flame, that's that orange flame, to put a layer of lamp black or soot on my ingot mold where the silver is going to flow through. That's going to stop a big buildup of air bubbles inside the ingot mold whenever I go to pour the molten silver in, and it's also going to stop the silver from kind of sticking in weird places and causing deformities in the ingot when it's all said and done. Right now I'm just aligning my ingot mold, and it's really important that you get it lined up properly, otherwise you'll have to actually take the clamp off every time to get your bar out when you're done. You'll know if you did it really well because you'll be able to just take a pair of pliers and pull the ingot that you just cast back up out of the top of the mold. And right here I did have it aligned, but I find it works really well if you kind of rub it back and forth together with that soot that's built up on there, so that it really seals it up and lines everything up properly so you don't end up with like a small air gap. In this next spot, I didn't realize that my gimbal wasn't very tight on my camera, so it is slowly drifting down. But basically I use two torches. I use my propane torch, that's the one that's on the two-part ingot mold now. That is a propane line hooked up to it, as well as another line that goes to an air compressor, so it's like forced air and propane. It's not as powerful as like oxyacetylene or something like that, but I find where I live, that's what I have access to, so it works really well for me. And then I used my just small hand burner to heat my crucible from the bottom. This allows the metal to heat up quite a bit quicker, so it cuts down on the time requirement. Yeah, technically it does use more propane, so it's kind of a win-lose type of thing, but I find it's helpful to save me a little bit of extra time because my shop's not very big and I don't like to run propane in there. I keep the door open while I do it, but I don't like to do it for very long periods of time. Right about here, we're coming up on the end of the heating and about to pour it into the mold. Got a really good pour. I didn't get too much over pour. I had one little glob drop. And yeah, I forgot to show, but I was able to just use a pair of pliers to pull that out, and I actually did 3 round stocks at this time. Now this rolling mill you're seeing, I bought probably 6 years ago. I've had to replace the bolts in it several times. It was like $162. Shipped from, I think, China, and took about 6 months to get to my house at the time. But for something that's lasted as long as it has, and it's really good for roughing out like smaller stock into sheets that I can put in my better rolling mill or to make square wire, it works for what it is. When you're making square stock, it's really important after the first pass to rotate it 90 degrees so that it stays square as you bring it down in size. It's also important, depending on your rolling mill, how big of increments of adjustment you make. That's that turn at the top. So when I'm doing square wire, I can usually do about quarter to half a turn depending on. You don't really want to go too much past that, or you run the risk of crushing it too fast, which can cause cracks to appear in your ingot. Another thing, if you don't get it hot enough when you cast it, and you get an air bubble trapped in there, you're going to find out while you're doing your rolling milling down to square, because you'll end up with a crack. We're coming up on the end of the biggest size of square wire that this rolling mill makes, and right here toward the end you'll see that they all came out very nice and square. I didn't have any issues when I was looking at them. I didn't see any cracks as I was going through, so my cast was good and I wasn't crushing them too fast. And then after this we just go to the annealing process. For annealing, it's important that you heat the metal up to a dull red in this low lighting. I do it with the light off because it makes it easier for me to see the color change. So it's going to look a lot brighter than it really was because the camera is doing a lot of lighting adjustments to make it appear darker than it really was. So whenever it turns orange, it looks like it's almost glowing white on the camera, like it's ready to melt, but it was nowhere near that heat. And then once you get it up to a nice dim red, not a dull but not like bright red cherry, somewhere kind of in between, then you just dunk it straight into room temperature water and the whole bar will become dead soft again. Now we're back over to the rolling mill and we're in the next groove. And from here, we're just going to work it down in size until it fits into my draw plate. Going through, I do the biggest groove on my rolling mill, then I anneal, then I do the next 2 grooves down and I anneal again, then I do the next 2 grooves down and anneal one more time before going to my draw plate. And that'll make it small enough that it'll fit in my draw plate. Right here you'll see me start to coil up the wire. That's because it's becoming too long to anneal it very easily if it was in a straight bar. So I like to make a coil that I can set on top of my fire brick and get a nice even annealing temperature to it. Alright, we're back over to the annealing. Here you see I put it on my fire brick and then I just start to heat it up. Once it gets that same red, I'll drop it in water and we'll go back to the rolling mill. Seems like common sense, but it is very important to untwist your wires out of a coil before you try to push them through your rolling mill, because your rolling mill's not gonna, it's not just gonna roll out and go through the rolling mill easily. It's just gonna pinch and cause issues. Alright, this is the last annealing process, and then after this quench, we're going to straighten it out, file it down, and go to the draw plate. This draw plate you see here, I didn't get a picture of the front of it, but it's a round hole draw plate. I think it cost me about 30 bucks. It was pretty cheap. A lot of my tools are on the kind of economy side of pricing for this video, But this draw plate goes from 2.8 millimeter down to 0.26 millimeter. So you can realistically make wire anywhere in that size range. You can buy these draw plates in a lot of different shapes and sizes. You can get rectangle, square, half round. I have a bigger round one that'll do from, I think, double aught all the way down to, I want to say 11 gauge maybe. It's kind of a big round draw plate. But yeah, you can get them in all different shapes and sizes. I recommend just getting whatever you need. And then if you don't want to cast your own ingots, you can always just buy your stock silver wire on the big side of things and draw it down to whatever you need. I find this process does take time, but I'm never waiting on the mail to get more wire in because I need 1.3 millimeter wire for a prong or something like that, and I don't have any on hand. I can just cast another silver bar, draw it out to 2.8 millimeters, keep it in that size, and then draw it down to whatever size I need from there. And then here at this part, you're seeing me just file it down to a taper so that it fits into the holes, and then from there I'll just put it in the draw plate, pull it through, and compress it down size by size the same way I did in the rolling mill. It's really important, what I find, is to never compress it more than about 1/3 of its thickness as it starts. So if you're starting with 2 millimeter thick square wire, don't compress it down more than about 1.5 millimeter on round before you anneal it again. I pulled this one down to right about 1.75 millimeters, which is kind of on the big end for wire, but I'll keep it this size. I'll anneal it, and then for whatever project I have coming up, I'll draw it down to a smaller size. And it's just as simple as that. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, leave a comment what other videos you'd like to see in the future. If there's something you want to see in silversmithing that you just don't know how to do, and you want me to make a video about it, by all means drop it in the comments below. Thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.